In the late 1800s, there was a famous British novel that was published called Tom Brown's School Days. Not only was it a highly successful novel, but later it was made into a movie, and even later, a TV miniseries at one point. The central character of the novel is a young boy named Tom Brown. Tom attended a very prestigious boarding school in England. He lived with about a dozen other boys his age in the same dormitory room. Tom was a popular boy, a natural leader, and the other students looked up to him. Whatever Tom said or did always had a big impact on the lives of those around him. One day, midway through the school year, a new boy arrived and was assigned to Tom's dormitory. When it came to go to bed that night, the new boy innocently knelt down beside his bed and began to say his nighttime prayers. The other boys in the room were not accustomed to this, and they began laughing at him and mocking him. One of the boys even threw a shoe at him. That night, Tom, though he did not participate in the mocking, did not sleep well. He lay awake thinking about what happened to the new boy. And as he lay awake, he also began thinking about his mother and the prayers that she had taught him when he was still living at home. Prayers that he had failed to say coming to the boarding school. The next night before bedtime, several of the boys had already devised a plan of how they were going to tease the new boy if he knelt down in prayer before going to bed. When bedtime came, however, something totally unexpected happened. As the new boy knelt down to say his prayers, so too did Tom Brown. When the other boys saw Tom kneeling in prayer, they suddenly called off their teasing and their mocking. Both these boys prayed in peace that night and every night thereafter. I think this experience in Tom's life illustrates the power that witnesses can have in our own lives. The new boy was a witness to Tom, and in return, Tom was a witness to the other boys in the dormitory. I'm sure on that second night, it must have been difficult for the new boy to kneel down and pray, knowing what had happened the night before. Equally, I'm sure it was hard that second night for Tom to kneel down and pray, knowing how his classmates had treated the new boy the night before. Nonetheless, neither of the boys abandoned their principles or their resolve that night. In spite of their fears and apprehensions, they did what they knew was right in the depths of their hearts. They remained true to who they were and what they were called to do. And as such, they not only lived a life of integrity, but they were able to help others witness their lives because of their courage, because of their determination, because of their authenticity. And as we gather to celebrate our Eucharist tonight, is this not the invitation and the challenge that we hear in our readings this evening, especially from our first reading from the book of Jeremiah and in our gospel reading tonight from St. Matthew? As we have now resumed this season of ordinary time, it is an opportunity for us to walk in the footsteps with Jesus and the apostles, not only learning more and more about who Jesus is and what his ministry and mission is all about, but moreover, learning for us what it means today to be a witness of Jesus and for us to continue on his ministry and his mission. Recall last Sunday in our gospel, Jesus was preparing to send the apostles to continue his ministry and his mission to the neighboring towns and villages. He empowered them with his authority, and they were able to go out to teach, to preach, to heal. And we reflected that that same mission that Jesus gave to the apostles then is also given to each and every one of us in and through the gift of our baptism. But although we have been called and sent, we have to make that choice. Will we be authentic witnesses of the good news, or will we allow ourselves simply to assimilate into our culture and day and age? Innocently, the new young boy that first night knew nothing better but to kneel down and to say his prayers, assuming that everyone would do the same. But the second night, that's when he had to make a choice. Would he continue to be true to himself in spite of the ridicule, in spite of the mocking, in spite of the laughter to him? In a similar way, Tom had to also make a choice that second night of whether or not he was going to return to his roots of what his mother had taught him, whether he was going to be a true leader and witness to the others and support this new boy. In order for both boys to do so that second night, they needed to have a sense of courage in their lives. And certainly we hear about this courage lived out by the prophet Jeremiah in our first reading. In our reading today, it begins with Jeremiah complaining and lamenting that God has called him to be a prophet, to be his spokesperson. And why is Jeremiah complaining? Because he is being ridiculed and mocked by his own contemporaries. But as our reading went on this evening, we hear how Jeremiah's complaining turns not only to a sense of submission, but even to a sense of trust and faith in God, that he is willing to do whatever it is that God asks of him so that he can be a faithful witness of the good news and to proclaim God's life and love to those that he encounters day by day. In a similar way in our gospel, as Jesus is preparing to send them out on mission, he warns them that there will be difficulties and trials, but he also gives them the assurance, not once, not twice, but 3 times in our reading, not to be afraid. He says to them, "Fear no one. Do not be afraid. Do not fear." He reassures them that if they're going to live lives of authenticity as his witnesses, no matter what happens to them, he will be with them. He will guide them. He will protect them. He will take care of them. And with that assurance, they are able to leave his side and to go and to do the work of ministry. And so the prophet Jeremiah, the apostles, as well as the new schoolboy and Tom Brown, remind us that if we are going to be disciples of Jesus, then we must be willing to witness to the good news in the midst of our daily lives. It does not mean, as I've often said before, that we have to get a soapbox and go to the corner of 3rd and Pine and recite Bible passages or paragraphs from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. But instead, we are called to witness through the authenticity of our lives. That as we live each and every day as credible witnesses of the good news, as we are filled with a spirit of joy because of our relationship with God, as we are able to proclaim the good news through our shared actions to one another, especially to those that are in need, then we become more and more credible witnesses of the good news. And when we have opportunity to share a personal testimony of how our faith has made a difference in our lives, then, like the young boy and Tom Brown, we can impact the lives of others. But we know that to be able to live our faith with this sense of integrity and authenticity is not always easy. Yes, it is easy when we are at home alone in the quiet moments of our personal prayer. Yes, it's easy when we gather in the church and are surrounded by like-minded brothers and sisters. But then what happens when we go home to our family that maybe is not practicing? What happens when we go into our places of work or recreation with those that do not believe? Do we have that same courage and conviction? And so, like Jeremiah and the apostles, we too need to hear that reassuring word of God. Fear no one. Do not fear. Do not be afraid. As we are able to live our lives with that sense of authenticity and faithfulness, not only does it allow us to be filled with the spirit of joy and to be able to deepen our relationship with the living God, but then in turn we have the opportunity to be able to impact the lives of others, as the young boy did to Tom, as Jeremiah did to his contemporaries, as the apostles did in their day and age. And so this week, let us perhaps be a bit more attentive of how it is that we can use our words and our actions, how it is that we can impact the lives of others by being faithful, fruitful, intentional disciples of Jesus. And when we are afraid, let us allow ourselves to turn to the Lord, knowing that He is with us and reminds us over and over again, do not be afraid. I am with you.